you so much for the kind introduction, and thank you for inviting me to Cyprus and to this fantastic institution which I've spent the last couple of days getting to know. And on behalf of the House of Literature, we are very happy that we have this ongoing cooperation that I hope that we will continue in the future. I'm also very honored and a bit frightened to be speaking first at the conference on such an important and complex topic. What I can do is only to offer you some examples of how one maybe could deal with historical culture in a context which is Oslo in Norway, and from the point of view of someone in a practitioner's viewpoint. So let me start by explaining a bit about the House of Literature before I will go on to talk a bit about one of our major projects, the Saladin Days, that was mentioned in the introduction, which is such an example. As mentioned, the House of Literature is the largest of its kind in Europe. It was established in 2007, and it's a non-profit foundation devoted to the greater good of promoting literature and public debate in Oslo and Norway. Throughout, we have a house in the city center of Oslo of 5 floors. It used to be a teaching school, which was completely renovated in 2006 and opened its doors in 2007 and hosts a range of activities. Our main activity, one could say, and the main kind of reason why it has become so important in Oslo as it is the public events that we host for all age groups and in many different forms: lectures, debates, readings, conversations, children's events, concerts, film screenings, and so on. This photo is from the entrance to our main auditorium, and on the walls you can see the decoration which was unveiled last year when we celebrated 7 years since the house opened. And the pictures actually consist of lists, complete lists of all the authors that have visited the house since the opening in 2007. So we're running at about more than 1,000 authors by now. We like the counts. We also like to count our events. We host about 1,600 public events per year, out of which 300 are programmed by myself and my colleagues, who are the staff of the House of Literature. But most importantly, the house is an open arena to all participants in the greater society. So NGOs, publishers, public institutions of different kinds can rent a space at the house to host their event, and we discriminate against no one. It's open to everyone, which is also part of the reason why it has become so popular, I believe, because it's owned by no one and therefore by everyone, in a sense. The house also hosts a cafe, a restaurant, and including a reading zone that you can see in the back, where in such a country as Norway, as I assume what most people usually say, the first thing people tell me about Norway when I tell them I'm from Norway is that, oh, it's so expensive there, which is true. Therefore, because the house should be open to everyone, there is a designated zone in the cafe where there is no one expecting that you buy anything or anything like that. It's open to everyone. It's a kind of a quiet reading zone with journals available. We also have we've devoted the whole loft, the uppermost floor of the house, to reading spaces for writers, which we offer for free, both through the writers' associations, but also with a very low, very accessible to everyone, anyone writing on a project can apply for a space and sit there and write, and several books have already been published that were written in the loft. The children are very important for the house. We have a separate children's room, which is especially designed for children. It's almost a bit difficult to see now, but the children and their parents are here sitting in this pillow amphitheater, in a sense, that can also be pulled out, and where we do readings and different kinds of events for children. The room is also open on weekdays in the daytime for kindergartens, and we use this room instrumentally, you could say, to bridge some of the gaps that exist in Oslo. And I thought about before when I was preparing for today, I was thinking of talking about it in such a setting as standing in this buffer zone in a divided city. It's maybe a bit of a strange claim to make, but in some ways Oslo is also a very divided city. Not spatially, not necessarily ethnically, but definitely socio-economically. It has one of the highest inequalities in life expectancy between east and west in the city, more than 10 years between east and west. Increasingly, the socio-economic divide is also linked to the color of skin. From our point of view, it's important to acknowledge that the children in Oslo, they don't necessarily meet across the city. So we try to facilitate when we invite kindergartens to come in groups, to have one group from each part of town come together. Not to like have any kind of like get to know each other games or anything like that, but basically that they meet through literature at the House of Literature, and that has a value in itself. We also have a bookshop, and together with other renters such as the cafe and so on, they provide a substantial amount of income for the house as well, which is important to keep it sustainable. And they also serve the events and help to attract more people to the house. Our main format, the main kind of thing that we do in our own program is literary events, literary conversations, and let me underline that we use the word literature in the widest possible sense of the word. It's not exclusively fiction, it's not exclusively non-fiction either. It is literature in maybe it's not theoretically grounded enough, but in the sense that it's the whole conversation that we as a society hold, and that we want to facilitate and keep as open as possible. Here is a picture from a conversation between the Nigerian author Chimamanda Adichie, who has listened to the house several times, together with she's a fiction writer. She's written some fantastic books. For instance, Half of a Yellow Sun, which is one of the most devastating and beautiful novels I've read about the Biafran War in Nigeria. And here she's actually discussing with a professor of philology, is that what you say in English? Yeah. From the University of Oslo, and they're discussing hair. And I think this is the point in the conversation where Chimamanda Adichie points out that he also has a haircut, although it's maybe not what you usually refer to as a haircut. After which she makes the point that Obama would never have been elected as president in the United States if his wife had an afro. So this was a discussion, shows how you can use literature as anecdotally evidence that you can use literature as a way of discussing more larger issues as well. Indeed, what we try to do is also to use literature as a window towards the world. And that brings me to the historical, cultural, maybe relevant program that we have. I have to rewind a bit. In 1187, after Christ, Saladin, the warlord and the leader of the parts of the Muslim world at the time, reconquered Jerusalem from the Crusaders. He did something at that point which was very unusual in his time, even today one could argue, when he refrained from revenge and opened the city to believers of all three faiths, and allowed the Crusaders that were remaining in the city free passage out of town if they would like to leave. And although this was was more of an exception, maybe even to Saladin himself's practice as a leader in that time, this story was a story that we chose to take as a starting point when we initiated the annual International Days of Saladin, not to celebrate Saladin himself, but to take this exceptional story in a sense as a starting point to challenge the perpetual message of eternal conflict that is so often communicated when we're discussing questions relating to the relationship between the West and the East or the Orient, between Islam and Christianity, between us and them. And we use this program to discuss and examine for and with a general open public the histories and ideas about the past, how they inform and influence our ideas and understandings of the world today, and also our actions. Since 2009 we have hosted them annually, as I said, in March every year, and on various topics. This year we focused on the question of the history of Al-Andalus and the legacy of Islam in Europe, which opened up also to discussing how religion is viewed and developed in Europe today, and many other topics. In 2013 we focused on what we call the Arab Winter. We posed the question, is there an Arab Winter coming in the aftermath of the Arab Spring? And with a particular focus on Syria and Egypt. In 2012, which was 3/4 of a year after the terrorist attacks on Oslo, where right-wing extremists bombed the government quarters and killed more than 70 youth and children in a summer camp. We used the occasion, we took the opportunity to discuss the rhetoric of crusades as applied and misused in our own times. As some of you might know, the terrorist Anders Breivik was very much influenced by this counter-jihadist rhetoric, the gates of Vienna, all this stuff. So we took the Saladin days and used them to examine the validity of the arguments and also to discuss how should we actually, regardless of what the history tells us about what it was like in the past, how should we go about today? Is there necessarily a link? Is there proof to be found in the past? Or is it something that we need to put behind us? In 2011 we focused on Israeli-Palestinian history writing, memory, juxtaposing the Israeli and new historians and the memories from the Nakba as told by Palestinians. The main speaker there was the Lebanese writer Elias Houri, and also participating were historians such as Avi Shleim and Ilan Pappel. And then in 2010, I'm going backwards because I want to focus on the program we had in 2010, which was the staging of a play called The Desert Storms, which we commissioned and which was written by two authors together, the Norwegian author Thorvald Steen, who is, to some extent at least, a known figure in Turkey today. Many of his books have been translated into Turkish. He writes historical novels predominantly. A lot of them set in Istanbul or Constantinople in the past. And he wrote the play The Desert Storms together with the British Pakistani author Tariq Ali. The two of them together in a very advanced kind of a bilingual exercise, which ended up in a play that tells the story of the relationship between Saladin and Richard Lionheart. So in the context of Norway, this story was interesting to tell because in Norway, Saladin is not known at all, or was at least before this, while Richard Lionheart is somehow kind of a hero, right? Because he's the king that was, he's from Robin Hood, right? And he's the good king that went away, and he's the, if he could only come back to England, things would be okay again, right? So never mind what he did when he went away, right? So that's the question, this relationship, and we put it up as a kind of a, what do you call it in English, I'm not sure, a Kammerspiel, like a very dense chamber play, something like that, like very, very concentrated, 8 actors on stage, very intimate in a small room. This is Saladin to the left and Richard Lionheart to the right. And you can see the performance was also made more relevant by subtle, discrete, more or less discrete artifacts being used on stage to suggest linkages to the present. The play was a great success. It was nominated to 2 Hedda Awards, which is the National Theatre Award in Norway, and it won one of them. And it has been translated into Turkish, English, and Arabic as we speak. I know that there a few copies of the plays actually in English are available in the cafe if someone wants to read it or have a look at it. The translation into Turkish has been staged in Turkey, first by a smaller theatre in Istanbul, and then this year, and actually this month, in Istanbul by the State Theatre, which is the concluding of a tour where it has been staged in Diyarbakir, in Adana, and Ankara. So, and as those of you who know Turkish politics might suspect, the play can play a rather different role in the Turkish context, as Saladin means something very different in Turkey than he does in Norway. And this is the interesting part also of discussing this project with the people here in the home and in the AHDR, is these different perceptions of and ideas of history and how we can use arts, for instance, to open up this discussion. Yeah. So those were the Saladin days. I will end by just mentioning also a project that we're doing in January. It opens in January. It's probably the largest project we've done, at least internationally speaking. The Sea Change project, which is a photo documentation project that has been conducted over the last 3-4 years. We have sent 13 photographers to an equal number of countries throughout Europe to document the lives of young people in the aftermath of the financial crisis. Countries such as Greece in this picture, the UK, Latvia, Norway, Iceland, Germany, Spain, Portugal, Czech Republic, Poland. Yeah, I won't try to mention all of them. There are more than 2,500 photos taken, which are held by the foundation and maybe used in different ways. An exhibition of the photos will open at the House of Literature in January, and then it will tour Europe. It will go to Berlin, London, Vienna, Salzburg, and so on. Hopefully also to the Home for Cooperation, and it will also be an international book publication. In extension of the opening of the exhibition, we are also hosting a large program of writers and journalists discussing the questions of the consequences of the financial crisis, the lives of young people in Europe today, and so on. So we try to make the program extended. If any one of you are interested in more information about it, you can find it in our webpage, which I should have had at the last slide, which I don't. But it's if we go to the first slide again, you can write down the name of the house of literature as it's spelled in the logo, litteraturhuset.no. And then if you're interested in the Saladin Days, you put / Saladin Days. Or if you're interested in the Sea Change program, you put / Saladin Sea Change _ English. Yeah, should have had that last slide with it. I'm here anyway, so please approach me if you want more information. And then I thought of something to say about this because we're watching this fantastic movie now, and I don't think I should say anything because it's a movie that really speaks for itself, and I've seen it already, and I've been looking forward to seeing it again ever since I saw it on the program. And I look forward to talking more with all of you in the coming time. So thank you very much for listening, and good luck with the conference.